Hi, my name is Harris. I'm one of your podcast hosts. I'm also a lawyer at Treadstone Law. For most Canadians, buying, selling, or refinancing real estate, a lawyer is the last thing on their mind. That's unfortunate because lawyers play a vital role in the process. But what choices do Canadians have? Lawyers can be very expensive. Well, Treadstone Law offers resources to Canadians so they have access to the information they need. Whether you sign up for a live workshop or a mailing list, we cover topics to help you make informed decisions and avoid costly mistakes. It's advice you can start using today, and best of all, it's free. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click the link below to get access right now. If you're looking to retain Treadstone Law, it's never been easier. Our entire process is online. From completing the retainer agreement to your signing appointment, everything is done from the comfort of your own home. We're your digital lawyers. The best part of it is that you don't pay anything when you're retaining our firm. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click on the link below to retain us right now. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to another episode of Hustle and Grit. Today, I've got a very special guest on today. I've got Claire Drage from the Windrose Group Mortgage Alliance. Claire is the CEO of Windrose Capital, the CEO of Windrose Group, and she's her brokerage is the top 1% in the Mortgage Alliance network nationally. So that's pretty amazing stuff. Welcome to the podcast, Claire.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
A pleasure is always ours. I mean, especially with somebody with experience like yourself, it's always good to get people in who've seen, especially in an era like today where everybody's kind of like looking at what's going to happen the next day or two. It's good to have people with experience who've seen the past 10, 12 years, 15 years. I mean, I'm looking at a little bit of your profile. You've been in here, and I'm trying to add it up in my mind. You've been in the industry for quite some time, so you've seen a lot of stuff. So you know that some of this stuff is temporary, some of this stuff may stick around, which is always good. But before we get into that, could you just give my listeners a little bit about yourself? How'd you get into the industry? Was mortgage brokering something you always knew when growing up that you're going to be a mortgage broker, or was it something that you fell into? What was your kind of journey in the mortgage brokering industry?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, you know what? If you told me when I was sitting with a career counselor when I was, 12 or 13, and if you told me that I would have left England, where I'm originally from, would have spent 11 years living in Spain with a property management and industrial laundry, and then moved to Canada and would be in mortgages, I would have said you were crazy. That sounds boring, like awful, like math. Who put letters in math? That's when it got totally messed up. Like I would have said absolutely not. But fast forward and here I am. So basically in kind of 98, we were living in Spain. My husband and I moved there in 1987, and our two boys were born in Spain. And we ran a large property management company and industrial laundry. So we managed about 140 odd properties. And after a while, working in tourism, and knowing really the only future for our boys was more tourism, made the move to Canada. So we actually landed in Calgary. And the reason why I'm giving you this bit of story is because my first job was working for a mortgage broker. So the first job I landed, when we landed in Calgary was underwriting for a mortgage broker. So that first got me into the mortgage brokering industry. Mm-hmm. So that was 98. So there's been a few changes since then, over the years, and was working for a mortgage broker for a number of years. Then went out on my own. So got my license still in Alberta, still in Calgary. And after about sort of 3 years, unfortunately, my husband became pretty sick. We were both self-employed at the time. Mm-hmm. And, we all know that comes with challenges. So young kids, so really needing some stability, to be honest with you. My weekends back, my evenings back, a health plan, and all those wonderful things that come with a regular job. So I took a position as a business development manager for a lender out in Calgary. After a couple of years, I was headhunted by a large finance company, GM, and they transferred me eventually to Toronto. So that's how I came to be in Toronto. Now, this was 2007. So I don't know if you recall what happened later that year.
A little bit, maybe a little bit.
So September 2007, I quit my very nice corporate job with GMAC and started brokering on my own. I truly recognize that I've spent a number of years in the corporate world, but most of my life has been self-employed. And the grass is always greener. Every time I think, oh, I need stability, I need a regular job, I get that regular job and just get frustrated at how stupid some people are that are running those companies, and want to go back on my own again. So that would have been 2007. I started back brokering. I knew no one in Ontario other than mortgage brokers and lenders, and of course they're not going to give you business. So me, myself, and I in our spare bedroom, all three of us, we agreed on everything. Started from scratch in 2007, and I haven't looked back. And over the time, sort of evolved the business into our current niche.
Awesome. No, I mean, so just to kind of pull back a little bit, when you were in Calgary, so when you're in Spain, you're doing property management. I'd like to, correct me if I'm wrong, self-employment is always, it's like business is what Elon Musk says, it's like looking into the abyss and chewing on glass. So there's always that element to it. But I feel like perhaps there are certain businesses with less risk, less active marketing than others. And I would put perhaps property management to be less active than mortgage brokering. So maybe you've got something, it's a bit more, I guess, predictable to some extent. I'm not going to say 100%, but and I'm choosing my words carefully here because I don't want to misrepresent it either. But going from that, then you're working. Now you're going into mortgage brokering. That is pretty much every day you're out kind of hunting. Wasn't there anything that kind of stopped you from saying, like, you know what, I've got a paycheck. The people around here are great, but maybe I need to go work on my own. But at the same time, every 2 weeks, there's a sum of money that kind of falls into my account. That's going to go, and I don't know what I'm going to make from 1 month to the next. If this is possible. The other thing is also you're in a different country, so you're also it's a different environment, similar to Britain. I wouldn't say it's like completely different, but still different, very different. Calgary is different from Toronto, so I can imagine the difference between London, England, and here. So was there any kind of inhibitions of saying, okay, you know what, maybe I need to think this through? What was your kind of perspective on that, and what made you kind of jump into it?
Awesome. That's such a great question, because making that decision to quit your corporate job and just, go out there on your own is a hard one. But at the same time, I always figure you only get out of something what you put in. And my frustration and having personal fulfillment is feeling I'm getting back out what I put in. I am good or bad. I give any person I work for, any client, 1,000%. And when it's not always reciprocal from an employer, I feel like I'm wasted. And the years flies by, right? I can always make more money, but I can't make more time. So no different to when we were in the UK. We just got married, my husband and I, and decided that the UK wasn't working for us anymore. We moved to Spain. This was the same feeling. Was just, okay, I'm young enough and ugly enough. If it doesn't work out, I know I can get another job. Like, jobs are to a penny. If you really hustle, you can get a job. Might not be the job you want, but considering you spend most of your waking hours in a job, working for someone else and making me miserable was just not going to cut it. So having said all of that, it took probably about 6 months of planning. I am a little bit of a control freak. So there's the obvious things, right? Having a financial plan, having a business plan, having buy-in from my partner. And that buy-in is not just, financial, but it's also the time commitment, that knowing that, having a relatively 40-hour work week, with a corporate job, but then moving into, okay, I might be doing 12 hours a day. I'm going to be doing open houses at the weekend. I'm going to, it's not going to be your regular Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So how do we balance that with the kids? So I will tell you, it took a lot of planning. I had a financial plan, a marketing plan, and a business plan, and also a plan if it failed.
Mm.
And how long was I going to give myself in order to figure that out? So I started in September 2007, shortly after the subprime crash occurred. But I had a very clear plan, and I started with, obviously prior to that, 4 or 5 months before that, making sure, if I need to borrow money, do I have enough money financially to sustain this for at least a year? That I wasn't worried about, I didn't want to come into a new business and be desperate for the next client to fund, because that desperation, I don't care what you say about how you're going to hide it or fake it till you make it. No, that doesn't always pan out. So I really wanted to make sure that I can financially sustain myself. The first thing I think that I really needed to focus on, so for the first 2 to 4 weeks of actually quitting my job and starting the new business, was how do I add value? How do I differentiate myself from all the banks, all the other brokers that are out there? I knew no one. I literally knew I'd have to pound the pavement, and I was prepared to do that and try and figure out a way that was going to set me apart. And it was going to be consistency and persistency. And really, with those two things and the support from family, and those that said I was crazy were no longer friends anymore. Look at me now.
I mean, I'd still like to say it's easier said than done. I mean, yeah, it's in retrospect, it's like you had a plan, but this is also why if anybody comes to me and they're kind of deciding whether they're going to a mortgage broker or a bank, I always say a mortgage broker. And the reason is the institutions and everything set up differently. So you could come to like the best mortgage specialist at a bank. When your mortgage comes to renewal, you go back. If they're good, they're not going to be there. If they're there, you're going to question why. With a mortgage broker, it's the complete opposite. If you're good at what you're doing, you're definitely going to be there. And if you're not, you're gone. So that's why, and for the listeners, if anybody does want to reach out to Claire, I'm going to have her contact information below. But that's why I say mortgage brokers are, for me, the go-to. And it's not just because the fact that they're going to be there. They're going to be there for several different reasons, not just because they're kind of giving out that same mortgage over and over again. It's because you guys have several different banks, several different products. With a bank, you're only, even if you're good, I don't know how good you are, and I'm not knocking banks. I love banks. We work with banks all the time. But if you're good, you're only selling like the bank's product. Whereas mortgage brokers, you could, for individuals who buy their first home, you could have one product. If you're moving up, if it's your forever home, it's a different product. If you're trying to get a credit line because your kids are going off to college and you need money, get a different product. It's not all stuck to one bank, and you know what's going on. If you want a cottage or if you want an investment property, everything kind of, you'll place them where they need to be, and you don't have to re-understand the borrower. That initial trust is built, and you're kind of figuring out, okay, what do you want to move on with? So that's kind of my kind of biggest push for, I mean, I'm not pushing anyone, but my biggest, that's why I advocate mortgage brokers. But so moving from that, clearly you're entrepreneurial. You've not only started that, but then since then, you've started a few successful businesses outside of just mortgage brokering. But let's sticking to mortgage brokering. If somebody who's listening to the podcast and says, hey, I'd like to reach out to Claire and Winrose Group, like what is the steps, what's the procedure of working with you, whether it's first-time home buying or refinancing? What is it like? What's that experience like working with your brokerage?
It's awesome. I mean, I'm biased, of course I am. But I'll be honest with you, it starts with a phone call. No matter how technology has improved and made us even more efficient, and I am a bit of a tech freak, so I do like those advances, there is nothing better than having a 15, 20-minute discussion, a call. Because there's a couple of things that we need to listen to what you're not telling us, not what you are telling us. So for example, if you just call up and say, I'm looking for a 5-year mortgage, I want to buy a home, there is a lot more that goes around what is the best product and solution for you than just getting you a 5-year fixed mortgage. So there's lots of discussions about, is your income going up and down? Maybe some tax implications, depending on what you're buying, if it's an investment property, how we structure it, what is it going to cost you to get out of the mortgage, not just get into the mortgage. If you're can you handle a variable or a fix? There's so many different products out there, and there's so many different opinions. And ultimately, I don't provide opinions, I provide options. So we actually like to give our clients 6 different options, which sounds overwhelming. It's really important to understand based on the
Yeah.
discussion. Like I can't tell over an internet app or even a phone call, or not even seeing you, whether you're 6 months pregnant and you're going to go on mat leave. That's going to significantly impact your income. Not
Hmm.
many employers top up. Or are you expecting to grow a family? Do you want to move in 2 years, 5 years? Is this your forever home? When do you want to be mortgage free? Like, there are so many things that we talk about. And I don't want it to sound like we have like 100 questions we're going to ask you. We have 1 or 2 open ended questions, and then that leads us to a discussion. It doesn't, talking about the mortgage product and the rate, that's the last thing we talk about,
Hmm.
because it doesn't matter what the rate is. What is your most affordable payment? And also, I always tell my clients, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And
Hmm.
need to hear is, if you make 100,000 and you come in and say, I need a $600,000 mortgage, one, you won't qualify for that, but you won't actually physically be able to make the payment.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen. So honestly, it's a discovery call. And then from there, we get into using technology to our advantage, in Easy Portal for documents, all the usual stuff to make it's so stressful getting a mortgage, especially when you're
Yeah.
in business and you get your own. And
Yeah.
it's stressful moving, and the last thing you want to be worried about is, are you going to get the financing? So that initial discovery call provides us with a super strong foundation for us to start to build our mutually beneficial relationship from. And that's really important to make sure, you know, I had a large team at one point and trained them on that initial call. And the first thing people would ask is, "What's your income?" And I'm like, no, no, no. You don't need to know their income right now and what they qualify for. That's a technical question. We need to ask a relationship and a needs question. That's the important thing that we need to focus on first, not the technical side of getting a mortgage. It's easy to fill in an application. That's easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they're looking at mortgages, they think a dollar is a dollar. You know better than I do that a dollar isn't a dollar. And I'm the first one to admit, like being in real estate law, we kind of see the end work of what you guys are doing. I still don't understand it. And I'm in it every day because there's so many different products. There's so many different features to a mortgage that the rate definitely is the last thing. And it's not just like what you're saying, where it's not about interviewing or interrogating anyone. It's about understanding your needs, about who you are, what your life is all about, where you see yourself going, and then placing you in the right product. Because a lot of people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people will say, you know what, especially the ones who are looking for rates, they may go for the lowest rate. But now all of a sudden, if you decide you're going to move a year later, breaking out of that mortgage is going to be very expensive. Where if you had portability, you may have paid a little bit more, but in the long run, the complete mortgage, you're paying less. It's not just about each month's payment. So that's why I feel these conversations are like the only thing to have. And I feel like, again, I think there's a lot of advertising going on, and people feel like, you know what, I could in 2 seconds this app is going to tell me I can borrow $1 million, and it sounds great. I don't have to talk to anyone. This must be right. So those things are, there's a lot of kind of I guess qualifications to that. If you could just touch upon a little bit of that, what the qualifications are when you're doing something online, and why it is necessary for you, at least I'm saying it's necessary, correct me if I'm wrong, for you to go talk to a broker and really understand what your income really is.
Yeah, and I think that now don't get me wrong, there are straightforward files that are easy peasy.
Yeah.
You're a salaried, straightforward T4 employee, regular job, you've been on the job for 5+ years, blah, blah, blah. You've got 20% down payment. It's all pretty straightforward. In cases like that, it could come down with us just diving straight into the rate question. When I look at online applications, etc., I think the key thing to remember, I get the phone calls when things don't work out, where they're not fully properly underwritten. 80% of deals die because of incorrect income. And what I mean by that is we know exactly, as licensed mortgage professionals, exactly what income we can and cannot use. Oh, I get investment income, but you only received it from 3 months ago and it was an inheritance and you're actually going to cash it out for your down payment. That's not
Mm.
income that's going to help you qualify because it's no longer going to be there. If you're self-employed, if you've got any form of variable income, and also I'm often surprised at how many people don't know what they make.
Well,
They're like, well, I think it's about 60 grand a year. Now, 59,500 versus 60 can make a big difference. And to find that out after you've put an offer in and you no longer qualify and you've got to come up with a larger down payment, I tend to see the fallout when, not necessarily as people fill in these applications that they know what is the correct data and how that gets interpreted. I get way too many phone calls where, it's a week before closing and I thought I was approved and I just got a call from, it could be a bank, it could be from anywhere to say my financing isn't going through for ABC.
yeah.
And, that can be an issue. Something as simple as you go online, the online applications typically will pull a TransUnion credit bureau. When you actually go and fund the mortgage, most, including brokers, we pull an Equifax because it has a lot more detailed, relevant information based on the risk of you getting a mortgage versus $1,000, store credit card. So they can show very different information. So the online app might say, "Yay, you're good to go," but then we pull Equifax. No, there's a couple of collections, and that family responsibility from 4 years ago is still owing, or you forgot to make that minimum payment on your, store credit card, and now you've got some lates. It can be very, very different. So a computer and an online system is only as good as the data you put in it. How confident as a consumer are you that the data you're putting in it is correct?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not even just the fact that the numbers should be there, and it's good to have that you guys are looking at the same information as the banks are. But I feel like as a borrower, you're going to be going and buying houses much more confidently, knowing that every single thing has been looked at and that the affordability that you've got, that number is closer or the closest to the real amount. Because I mean, I also want to plug this in that most borrowers don't realize you got to get approved twice, or there's two approvals. There's your approval and then there's house approval. So just because you're approved doesn't mean the house is approved, which is why I always say put in a financing condition. But changing gears a little bit, I want to move more towards like market questions, and and the reason I'm really kind of looking forward to this is because you've seen a lot of markets, and so you've been in the industry for quite some time, so I think it's safe to say that you've got a lot of experience. My question to you is, and this is a crystal ball question. I'm going to start off with a crystal ball question. Where do you think our rates are going to be in December, in like this time next year? Is it still going to be, some people say we're going to start going back up. Some people say the rates are going to come down. Some say it's going to be flat. What's your kind of perspective? I understand for all my listeners, this is just an opinion. Obviously, this is not to work off of. So I'll give the disclaimer before you do. You can give it as well. But what's your opinion on where the rates are going?
It's a really good question. And remember, I said to you at the beginning, I tell my clients what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. So the first all, I would say, we're in a new reality. This is real. Rates are never, ever going to go back down to 1.5%, 2% again. The challenge we've got is we've had 15 years of super low rates. So we've almost got a whole generation of mortgage holders, or soon to be, that are thinking that 1% to 2% interest rates are normal, and they're not. So the standard rates around that 3.5% to 4.5% range is where I predict they will stabilize at. When they will stabilize is a totally different question. With inflation numbers going up and then down, and then, you get 8 or 6 different news stories and they all have a different opinion. The Bank of Canada has a goal. And their goal is obviously to keep inflation in line, and the consumer price index and all that wonderful stuff. So without getting too techie, every week I adjust my answer. And right now, because every week's different.
Yeah.
The reality is rates are not going to go down until people stop spending. Have you been to a mall lately? Have you
Yeah.
tried to book a hotel room anywhere in Ontario or anywhere, or a vacation? Everything has gone up. And now we all know things have gone up in price, whether it's a bag of bread or lettuce or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But the reality is it's not stopping enough people from not buying. So we've got this big disparity. We've got, the lower income earners that are really hurting. They're potentially not those that would be mortgage or real estate investors at any point. However, they're hurting the worst. So we're seeing a bigger gap between, those that have assets that can afford to pay and those that can't. So until the malls get emptier and people just stop spending money, like, I can't believe how packed the
Mm,
malls are. Until they
yeah.
stop spending, we're not going to see rates going down.
Mm.
And even if they do, get used to 4% being a good rate.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the 1% was the anomaly. I don't think people thought this is a new norm. 4% is a norm. It's I would say, long term norm. But like you said, yeah, there's a lot of people spending money. I remember, going out and you get like a burger or a combo or whatever. It used to be like 10, $15. Now it's like 20, $25. I'm like, what am I buying? I don't know what I'm getting. So it's inflation is there because people are buying, because people are ready to buy. But then my question then is for those of you, for those of the listeners, for those who are Canadians who are trying to enter that market, who are considering, okay, I'd like to buy my first home, but I don't know what's going on. Are the rates going to keep going up? Like you're saying, like there's the spending means that there's upward pressure on rates, but there is downward pressure as in people are debt burdened as well. So as a Canadian who is looking to buy a home, what should my strategy be over the next 6 months, a year, to get myself ready to buy a home whenever I'm ready?
It's such a good question. So it's a really boring answer. Budget. The
Yeah.
bottom line, budget. Like, do you know what your disposable income is? That's the difference between the cash that comes into your bank accounts, your earnings, your net earnings, versus your expenses. And so if right now after you've actually done a budget and or you've looked at your past expenditure and you've got more money, you're not running paycheck to paycheck, you've still got a couple of grand left in your bank account and you have no debt, no credit card debts that are carrying forward month to month, with interest being accruing or adding, then that's your disposable income that you've got to play with as a savings plan and or your cushion when you become a homeowner, where you have a mortgage, property taxes, maintenance, utilities, and I'm sure you'll want a flat screen TV and a leather couch somewhere, right? Or 6 flat screen
Yeah,
TVs.
yeah.
It's not just one anymore, it's one in every room and
Yeah,
all
one on every wall.
gadgets. So it's not sexy, it's not exciting, but it is budget. If you can't afford to, if based on your current spending habits, you are looking forward, like you're literally counting the days till I'm going to get paid on Friday, so I'll have money in my bank, then you've got maybe a little bit more homework and work to do to get to a point where you're not only starting to save, but you're being realistic on what the new costs will be being a homeowner.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of people don't always, aren't thinking about, well, if my mortgage goes up, how can I afford that? It's higher than my rent. Well, based on where you're buying, that might not be the case with
Yeah.
how much rent's going up. However, each mortgage payment you make, portion of it is going to principal, which means it's a forced savings plan. So, if your mortgage payment and your rent is the same, you are still better off buying if you're budgeting. And just because you're a homeowner doesn't mean you're rich.
Hmm.
It means you're poor
Hmm.
until you start to pay down that mortgage, right? Your first 5 or 10 years. So really not an exciting answer. Planning, budget.
Hmm.
Those are the two things. Maybe there's work to be done with regard to, credit scores and things like that. Maybe it's a co-ownership strategy. Maybe you need to, buy with. We're seeing a lot more people buying 2 or 3 friends. I'm
Hmm.
seeing a lot more where people are just getting onto the property ladder, and it's not necessarily a principal home. It could be a cottage, that you Airbnb. It could be a duplex in an other city that's not the city you work in or want to live in, purely because the numbers make more sense. You're getting onto the property ladder. Every year you keep waiting, the length of time to get your organized
Yeah.
means you're further away from actually being a homeowner. Sometimes you've got to take a leap of faith knowing that, okay, I'm going to buy a home, and I know that for the first couple of years, maybe I can't have 3 foreign vacations. Or, maybe I've got to have budget beer on a Friday. Some people
Yeah.
like budget beer.
Yeah.
you know, the trade-offs, if you like, but the long term is huge. I think we all know if you can go into, I don't want to call it retirement because, when you're 20 odd, who cares about retirement really?
Yeah.
It's realistic. But the closer you get to, your 40s, 50s, and 60s, and you have real estate as part of your net worth, you're definitely going to have a much smoother journey through those golden years where you need income.
Yeah. And the other thing, to add to what you're saying is, even though if rent may be sometimes even maybe lower than the total cost of ownership, I always argue to buy the house, because in a lot of ways you're freezing your payment. Your payment's not going to go up, but rents are constantly going up. That depends on interest rates, inflation. There's a lot of other things. But when you get I look at, frankly speaking, my parents' mortgage and how much they're paying a month, and I'm like, with that payment today, you can maybe afford an outhouse. I'm not sure, but you can't get a house, let alone this kind of house. But so you've kind of directed it towards people who are saving money, who are looking to kind of jump into the market. What about all those people who are saying? Because I feel like there's a lot of people on the sideline saying, you know what, the prices have come down. I think that they're going to keep coming down. So I'm going to wait until I get the cheapest house, and then I'm going to jump in. Because they've already got the savings, but they're just waiting. What's kind of your advice to them on how they should approach the market?
Do you have a crystal ball? like none of us do. None of us do.
Yeah.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda. We can all look back, but we can't look forward. It just doesn't exist. So you're always going to find something to, like a lot of people go, oh, I wish I'd sold last year, last summer, I would have got, $300,000 more than I would get today. But the fact is you weren't selling last summer and you're not selling now. So it doesn't matter what you would have got because you didn't do it, right? It didn't happen. So I think it's like people say, oh, I wish I won the lottery, but I haven't bought a ticket.
Yeah.
Right? So you're never going to win the lottery. So not saying home ownership is a lottery, but it can definitely create wealth while you sleep and protecting you from your own money, creating not a silent asset, but something to grow. So my comment is always, no one has a crystal ball. If you're serious about being a homeowner, I'm not sure there's been many circumstances where you could actually say, if you're secure with your income, you're secure with your savings, you're secure with your budget, like you're confident on all those things, when you find the right home, if you're looking at your principal home, when you find the right home, then what are you waiting for? You're waiting for rates to go down. You're waiting for the market to go down. Are you waiting for a home around the corner specific that is going to go down in price? Maybe it won't, because ultimately you can't. I'm finding, especially recently, I look at my own neighborhood. I'm sort of kind of in the country-ish, tiny small acreage, but just, there is a lot of, it's more like suburbia, if you like.
Yeah.
And, properties go up and they're gone in, like there was one that went up for a crazy price and it was gone within 24 hours because a buyer was coming in from Toronto and saw the value. Another property for way less has been on the market for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Again, we don't have a crystal ball. So if you're ready to make the plunge, just do it. Just, but always think about what's the worst that could happen.
Yeah.
You can't live your life with regrets, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I'd bought. Every year, I guarantee you, I'll eat my hard hat that's behind me that we use for site visits. I'll eat my hard hat every year that you wait, or every 6 months. I guarantee you, first thing you're going to be thinking of is, I regret I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah. No, and to the people like you're saying that said that if I sold it last year, it was going to go down 300,000. I think that for a lot of people, like when you sell, you're also buying. So what you bought is going to go $300,000 less too. So it's not like there's. I think psychologically you're seeing the number go down, but you also have to look at your standard of living, which when you're buying and selling, it's somewhat the same. But for those guys who are kind of trying to time the market to see the bottom, the only time you're going to see the bottom is when it's going back up. It's going to go back faster than it came down. So. That's kind of my 2 cents. But you know what? I appreciate, Claire, you coming on. Any last words for our listeners before we sign off?
Last words. I would say that you don't have to follow the standard path of home ownership. If you're a first-time home buyer, don't just rule off the fact that you can't. I'll never be able to buy. Well, if that's what you think, you're right. So the reality is there's other options. There is co-ownership. There is buying rental properties. There is, buying something that needs some work. So you create or build value. You don't need to be an expert to do that. So have a plan. Just start the discussion, to either have what you're thinking confirmed or have someone give you some advice that's from a true experience perspective. The only thing I would finally say is there is no Canadian real estate market. I don't care what anyone says. My street can look totally different to your street. Totally different. Like it can be miles apart. Not geographically. I mean, are they going to go down? How many more listings are coming up? Etc. So your situation's unique. You are unique. So make sure you get a unique solution and good, solid advice from professionals that are giving you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
No, perfect. Awesome advice. For all my listeners who want to reach out to Claire and her team, contact information is going to be below or on the side, depending on where you're listening from, side being there. Definitely reach out wherever it is. Click on it, reach out, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.